Well, you the one talking about. I guess
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No, ain't nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
You know, I messed up, John. I forgot to bring something up yesterday.
Oh, yeah, what's that? Was it your bad-built Brad body?
No. You know, there's this new show that's going to be on ABC, and it's not a sports show. It's like a political show, and it's called The Wide World of Eigel. And Chris Schenkel is coming back to, do that show. No, but seriously, folks, I talked about this last week, and nobody believes me about the fact that Bill Eigel, who did not make it as governor in the primary back in August, is essentially going to end up with Glenn Beck, and quite possibly could do one of his shows on radio and TV as well too. And when I say this, I'm not kidding, because of the fact that guess who was in town over the weekend? I forgot to bring this up yesterday. Guess who was in town over the weekend to meet with Bill Eigel?
Okay, I'm going to roll the dice on Brad's made-up stories. Dana Lash.
No. Glenn Beck was in town over the weekend.
Oh, wow. Was he really?
Yeah.
He was at that seance for Martin Dugan, right?
No.
We all got together. It was at midnight, and we tried to bring Martin Dugan back, right?
No.
We're telling Halloween stories now, right, Brad?
Glenn, see, you think I'm making this stuff up. Glenn Beck was in St. Louis over the weekend. And
Did he have a layover at Lambert?
No. He was here. I think he came in Friday afternoon and didn't leave till sometime Sunday afternoon. He was here to talk to Bill Eigel. And see, once again, I'm the guy that in 2016 say, Trump's going to win the presidency. Everybody said, no, there's no way. Look at the polls. Look at Hillary. And then in 2020, I'm the guy that said, there's no way in the world that Trump's going to win again. It's going to be Joe Biden. Everybody go, well, but he never comes out of his basement. Hey, trust me, I know these kind of things. And I'm the guy that says right now that we will have our first woman, black, Asian, Hindu, whatever she is, president on January 21st of 2025. And when I say that Bill Eigel met with Glenn Beck when he's in town over the weekend, I'm not kidding. I'm being
I'm sure. I take it right to the bank, Brad. I checked that out on the prayer line. I called 25 God Squad, and I said a prayer that would happen. When you were talking about your Kamala statement there too, Brad, you forgot to mention the fact she'd be our first middle-class woman president.
That's gotten to be such a meme. Everybody's got a meme up. I got one yesterday where it's like a 2-frame meme where she's getting pulled over by a police officer. She's driving a car, and the police officer walks up to the window, and he says something, license and registration, ma'am. And then the second panel, she says, I was brought up in a middle-class family. I mean, it's just everywhere. Okay, that is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. He's the guy that every single day of his life for 22-plus years, now that we're in October, we officially can say it's 4Q of 2024. When is the 23rd anniversary again? I know it's in October.
Yeah, it's this month, Brad.
What's the date?
Yep, you're right. It's in October. We're not going to make a big deal about it because I'm not a self-congratulatory guy.
Well, I'll
tell you about it after it happens.
No. Tell me the date. Come on, you're not going to tell me the date?
Absolutely not. Nope.
Well, John told me off the record. It's tomorrow. It's October 2nd. So anyway, this is the John Combest guy who puts together this list of all this important stuff around the state of Missouri. He publishes it every morning on his website, JOHNCOMBEST.com. And we start the show off with this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
He comes in and does this countdown thing.
Now on with the countdown.
And we start off with the third most important story according to John Combest. Casey, take it.
In third place.
If you're a progressive in the St. Louis area and you've lost the St. Louis Post-Dispatch editorial board, you've lost a lot, Brad. And that seems to be what has happened to St. Louis Public Schools school board, let me say that correctly, school board, particularly as it relates to Miss Keisha Scarlett. And the headline of the Post-Dispatch editorial today is, "Why fire a school superintendent for cronyism, then leave her crony in charge?" So what the Post-Dispatch is asking, Brad, is why would the school board get rid of Keisha Scarlett, who invented all these make-believe new offices, got a whole bunch of her cronies paid, and then put her chief deputy, her number one capo, her underboss, in charge of the school board? It just doesn't make any sense, Brad. And what I love about this Post-Dispatch editorial is when they were describing some of these LLCs that were made to allegedly enrich Keisha Scarlett's friends, they said that she gave them 5 or 6-figure contracts for, quote, gobbledygook responsibilities. And they particularly called out what we've talked about on the show before, like strategic planning, lean management practices, and cabinet team support. So the Post-Dispatch editorial point, Brad, is that why would you take somebody, if you believe that a system is corrupt and has been frittering away taxpayer dollars, why would you put the number 2 person, the underboss, the capo, in charge of the school district, in charge of the hen house yet again, instead of getting some fresh new blood, Brad?
Well, I know the answer to that.
Oh, what's the answer?
She's only going to be in for a year, and then Mo Mazalok's going to take over.
Yeah, that's a great point. Hey, he's got to have something to do come 2026, Brad.
Right. He's going to be unemployed, so he's got to. Here we go again. And the thing I saw over the weekend is, hold on a minute, my voice is going. I'm going to clear my voice there. Okay. She's not even certified to be a superintendent. Apparently, in the state of Missouri.
Technically, Brad, technically. But you know what? Why do you have to be certified? Go ahead.
Well, isn't that a law in the state of Missouri that if you're a superintendent,
yes, it absolutely
you have to have some kind
Brad,
of.
She's going through the process. You know, Brad, in your old stomping grounds over in Sauget, you talk to a lot of young women who were totally working their way through school, right? Maybe Millicent is totally working her way. She's totally going to get that superintendent certification, Brad.
The whole St. Louis school thing is just a mess. And, the crazy thing about it is, going back to the transportation issue, which they're still having problems with. Remember, they were talking about, well, we've got it all figured out. We're going to give a bunch of the high schoolers, we're going to give Metrolink passes, Metro bus passes. And then, what's the guy, I love his name. What's the dude from Bi-State who has the interesting name that Ed Golterman hates?
I don't know him.
God, I can't remember his name. He comes out and says, nobody's ever talked to us. Nobody's from the school board.
Yeah.
School board's never even called us because the fact we have some issues with what they're saying in the press. And matter of fact, we don't know if we can handle some of the students and some of the bus runs because some of the runs they're talking about putting students on are very popular runs and the buses are almost full anyway. So how would he got to get his kids on the boat? What's his name? God, I can't remember his name.
We can look it up over break.
Okay.
If you were building, Brad, one of the things that we haven't talked about, and I haven't done a deep dive on this yet, but over the weekend, did you see some of the headlines about Greater St. Louis Incorporated and the new safety plan? The idea of having like people that are kind of safety ambassadors downtown. Did you see this?
Talby Roach. I just remembered his name. Talby Roach. Okay.
Okay.
The safety ambassadors. John, would you sign up to be a safety ambassador in downtown St. Louis?
I thought you were going to end that question with saying Town and Country or Huntley, in which the answer would be maybe. But yeah, no, absolutely not. But I think it is brilliant, though. And I haven't read enough about it. But in general, Greater St. Louis Inc., which is, kind of a cheerleading group, quasi-governmental cheerleading group, and certainly is aligned with Tishaura Jones, can essentially spend money on a PR effort to say, no, come down to the city. We'll answer questions for you. We'll walk you from a garage to a restaurant so you don't get shot. We'll escort you, whatever. And I think truly it's brilliant. I don't know how much longer. I don't know how much money they have to spend on it. But man, Brad, it's just I don't even know where to begin with it.
Are you being facetious, John? Or are you really serious?
I'm being serious because if you're Tishaura Jones and you're up for election in March, then you have a third-party group that can essentially serve as a campaign arm for you, right? Like they don't have to list it as a contribution, but they can go out and say, "City's great, crime's down. Look at this. We have safety ambassadors." And then, you know what? I bet you anything, Brad, for real, in the next few months, they will be ushering people to and from blues games or concerts or whatever, and people will have a good experience with these ambassadors and maybe say, hey, you hear a lot of bad stuff about the city, but I went to a Blues game and I didn't get robbed. Or I had dinner somewhere in a decent neighborhood and I wasn't killed. It was daylight. But still, I went to Crown Candy Kitchen and my car didn't get broken into. You know?
You saw that they got broken into again. Did you see that recently?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, yeah, we know where they are.
And they did like $2,000 worth of damage to the building, and they got $5 out of the cash drawer. It's like
a bad return on investment.
Yes, no
Stars
kidding.
in story number 2, Brad.
Okay, let's move on to number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Mark Reardon show yesterday, Brad, had a woman named Brooke Foster from the group that's called Missourians Against the Deceptive Online Gambling Amendment. Excuse me. I should point out, too, that on the show before we were trying to figure out if this Brooke Foster was the same Brooke Foster that was aligned with the cannabis industry. In fact, a listener emailed me and asked me that question, and I didn't have the answer, but I believe the answer is no. I believe this Brooke Foster from this Missourians Against the Deceptive Online Gambling Amendment is a different Brooke Foster. But this woman did a really good job walking through with Mark Reardon why this group believes that the sports betting amendment is a bad deal. And Brad, it seems like the narrative or the story from this group has gone from, hey, there's no guarantee that any of this money will go to education. It seems like the narrative has shifted a little bit to another message point, which is even if money goes to education, it's not going to be much at all. And Brooke Foster walks through how much money these gambling companies, these sports betting companies, would be able to write off when it comes to their gains and their losses. So in other words, one of the examples that was given is if DraftKings does a deal where they say, hey, sign up today and you'll get a free $200 to wager, they're able to write that $200 off, from what they make in Missouri that year. And then they won't have to pay taxes on it, which means they won't have to give a cut to the state, which means that it won't go to kids' classrooms. So Reardon and Brooke Foster talked a little bit about this. Now, to cut to the chase, Reardon, for example, says that he's voting for the sports betting amendment for reasons that don't have to do with money going to schools. He thinks it's a kind of a libertarian type thing. These are my words, not his. He thinks that people should be able to bet on sports, and he doesn't care so much about how much money is going to education. But if folks want to learn a little bit more about the back and forth on how much casinos or these sports betting companies, I should say, have to actually pay, listen to this interview.
John, what's interesting is I heard the interview live yesterday, and I found her absolutely positively fascinating because at one point in time, she's crunching the numbers, and supposedly she's crunching the numbers that are in the constitutional amendment. And she said that when there's money for education, didn't at one point in time she said it could be as much as $30 per student per year.
Yeah, and Brooke points out, this Brooke Foster woman points out, she says that could buy you about 2 packs of highlights.
Yes, that's okay. Now, here's what you don't know about this. After I heard this interview, I texted Mark Reardon. I go, Mark, will you give me her contact information? I'd love to see if I could get her on the show. And he texted me back with her contact information. So are you up for me contacting her today and see if she can maybe go in the air tomorrow?
That would be great. And you can confirm whether or not she's the same Brooke Foster that does cannabis stuff. I don't think she is.
Right. That's the number one thing. But I have to tell you, and you tell me, I thought she was very impressive. I mean, she wasn't like, well, it's going to be bad for the community. It's going to make things. She was giving numbers and facts and figures, and she was making comparisons to other states, what had been happening in other states. Once again, the same thing. Oh, it's going to be money for education. And you and I kid about this all the time. But now, and help me out on this, okay? Mark made a couple references to the fact that the lottery thing was sort of smoke and mirrors. Is that really the case? Is there like no money going from lottery to the schools, or is what's the deal? What was the reference he was making on that?
I think the money from the lottery definitely goes to education, but the idea of both the gambling stuff from the early 90s and the lottery, the idea is that it was a shell game. In other words, the legislature took all the money that they had originally appropriated for schools, and then once gambling passed, they moved what was school money to other priorities, and then took the new money and called it education money.
Which essentially it's a zero-sum gain for the education in Missouri. Essentially,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Essentially, you took $1 out of the normal Missouri education budget, and you put $1 in from the lottery, and you go, oh, look there's lottery money going for education. Yeah, but you just took the equal amount of money out. See, the interesting thing for me was, what I thought was interesting, exactly what you picked up on, is the fact that they're talking about the money that's going to go to Missouri is from sports gambling is going to be net, which means after all expenses. And the thing she brought up, like you talked about, was the fact that if they gave you $200, hey, you can gamble for free, we'll give you $200. That essentially is a deduction. So in other words, when they give that $200 away for free, that's less money that the school districts are going to get because they write that off as deduction, and they're only giving schools the money on the bottom line, which is, in other words, it's like the old game. I mean, I had a friend of mine years ago that, believe it or not, had a record that became somewhat of a hit record, and he told this story about he was in a band, and he told the story about he thought it was wonderful that his record company, they were putting him in these nice hotel rooms, and they were giving him limousine service and great meals, and then when it came for them to get paid out on the record deal for their sales, they got no money because the record company deducted the nice hotel rooms, the nice meals, the limousine service. So essentially, they made no money. The record company took all the profits, and the guys in the band got squat. And that's sort of what she was saying. I mean, I'm not trying to synopsize it, but that was sort of the overall characterization she made, wasn't it? That when
yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I mean, look, and Reardon brought up the fact, you heard this live in real time, that Reardon's joked about the fact that he's got a creative accountant. And, an accountant's going to look for every creative write-off they can.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised by any of that.
Well, and since they're writing the legislation themselves, like you said, there's two carve-outs for what'd you call it, like non-entities or something like that, which essentially is FanDuel and DraftKings, right?
That's exactly
those
right.
Are the two
Maybe
carve-outs.
we should talk about that in a different segment after we get to story number 1 with a minute left.
Which is?
The number one.
Good news if you're looking at safety on St. Louis streets, but bad news if you're involved in the rap community in St. Louis, Brad. Local and federal officials tout prosecutions of South St. Louis fentanyl distribution ring. This story is brought to us by Katie Cole of the Post-Dispatch. You say, John, what does a fentanyl ring have to do with St. Louis rap music? Well, the alleged head of the fentanyl gang, Brad, is a gentleman named local rapper Devontae Lindsay, who goes by the name of Jizzle Buckz. That sounds like something that you might get at a casino, Brad. You get $100 at the window. You also get 10 additional Jizzle Bucks that you could spend somewhere. But Jizzle Buckz and his crew have been they've been sentenced in federal court for drug, weapons, and money laundering crimes. They also got their hands on Jizzle Bucks's crew is called 55 Boys. And he has a chain bedazzled with roughly 2,500 diamonds. To our previous point, Brad, I think he was able to write that off as an expense because he wore it in the videos. And as an aside, I wanted to clown his rap career when I came on here, Brad. And then I heard one of his songs because I went to YouTube. He has a song called Crazy Story that's actually really good. And he talks about how he's been evading charges and how people wear wires and how he'll never be brought down for all of his crimes. And so, well, he published that song 5 years ago, so that might have been true back then. But anyway, Jizzle Buckz is off the streets, and the federal and local authorities say that the gang was one of the largest fentanyl distributors in the city. They had allegedly a number of houses. Mr. Jizzle Buckz had purchased even his own drug house with this money, allegedly. And then he was able to store the dope at other places and get the dope out on the streets. So bad news, I guess, if you're a fan of Jizzle Buckz and the 55 Boys, but good news getting all this fentanyl off the streets.
Was he by any chance involved with the lunches for the kids under coronavirus? Was he involved in that at all?
He was, and he got 14 loans with the St. Louis Development Corporation. But to offset it, Brad, he's one of the ambassadors, one of the wayfinders downtown for Tishaura Jones' re-election campaign / Greater St. Louis Inc. So he does a little volunteer work. He does a little 55 Boys.
Jizzle Buckz. That sounds like a cartoon show on Saturday morning, doesn't it? Hey, it's Jizzle.
It does.
It's Jizzle
By the way,
Buckz.
his homie, Andre Lil Half, Luh Half Pearson, Snoop had a song on the Chronic on Little Ghetto Boy. He said, I'm in a two-man sale with my homie Lil Half did. So I wonder if Lil Half came from the Snoop song from the Chronic. The world may never know, Brad.
Okay, we got to take a break. We'll be back.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?